Are you curious about the history and current events of witch hunts? Want to understand the root causes and how it's still relevant today?
On Thou Shalt Not Suffer, the Witch Trial podcast, we dive into the fascinating world of witch hunts and the impact they've had on society, past and present.
We talk to a wide range of dynamic expert guests, delving into nuanced, richly layered topics about witch hunts around the world.
And we keep you up to date on all the latest news and current events related to witch hunts.
We're here to start a conversation and challenge the way people think about witch hunts.
So join us every week for a new episode, full of thought-provoking discussions and captivating stories.
Thank you, and have a great today and a beautiful tomorrow.
Hello, everybody. This is Megan.
And this is Alana.
And welcome to Tea Time Crimes.
Halloween edition. Spooky time.
Well, hello. We are finally into our spooky season of October, which means I get to do the most fun episodes ever. How you doing?
Doing great. A little apprehensive about the spooky season as usual, but excited for the candy in the spooky season as usual.
Obviously, favorite candy?
Candy corn.
Seriously?
Okay, that was a knee-jerk reaction, but you got to trust it. For the season, yeah. I mean, favorite candy normally a sour candy, like a sour belt probably is my favorite.
So
it's hard.
You and Roger are the two people who like candy corns.
Oh, there's a whole army of us.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I want to like them and I will eat them, but every time I eat them, I think,
I mean, they are weird. It's just like wax, but I do like candles, so maybe there's a relation.
I know, you'd think with my sprinkle connection, you think I would be just by the pound, but they're not the same to me.
And I like to eat each section separately.
Of course you do, because one, you need to nibble a little bit. That's just your thing for all foods.
Yep. Exactly.
My favorite candy would just be chocolate, hands down. Like a peanut butter cup or Milky Way or Three Musketeer, Twix, that kind of stuff. All right. Well, do you have any big announcements or should we get right into that tea?
We're going to be with each other next episode.
I know. We're going to try to
prepare yourselves for that.
Yeah,
folks.
Together next week, which hopefully
it's
works.
just going to be pure giggles. So prepare yourselves.
All right. Well, what do you have for a tea today?
Chris got me a pumpkin spice tea for my birthday. So I thought it would be perfect to hold on to that for the first spooky season. You can see there's pumpkins or apples on the front of that. Post a picture of that.
They're always pumpkins.
Call back to last year. I really enjoy Republic of Tea because they don't get stingy on the descriptions. As you know, it's very important to us here at Tea Time Crimes.
Well, to one of us, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So just like you're going to get into the vibe. Ready?
I'm ready.
Well, first of all, the tagline is keep warm and carry on.
Nice.
Cozy up and sip this warm blend of fine black tea and autumnal spices, cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, and cloves. Energizing black tea wards off the chill of the crisp fall season. A splash of warm milk transforms this tea into pumpkin pie in a cup.
Oh.
Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Do you like pumpkin pie?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
I could do without the crust of the pumpkin pie.
Yeah.
That's how I feel.
Okay.
Okay.
Thanks for telling your truth here.
Always. You might recognize this cup. You'll also see it in the picture that we'll post this week.
It says, hello, pumpkin. And on the inside, it says what?
You've been poisoned.
And I know because I got it for her to kick off our spooky season.
All right. Smells like pumpkin. Shocker.
Yeah. I didn't see that coming.
This is a nice fall tea. I steeped it for 5 minutes, which I is usually my minimum for a black tea because I do like it strong.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a beautiful body. The pumpkin gets in there right away and stays there. It's here to stay for the season. Let me do another sip. Yeah, the heat, it jumps in and then spreads out and just hangs out. It's like putting up the Halloween decorations for the month. And then it sits nice and warm, which would be perfect on a nice fall day. So because I like the word so much, I'm going to give it an autumnal thumbs up. It's really nice. Good job, Republic of Tea. You usually do well.
Are there any other flavors or is it just pumpkin?
I'm really just sensing the pumpkin, the
Mhm.
cinnamon, ginger, and that's not coming through, or the nutmeg or the cloves. So pumpkin really, like, it's a big fat pumpkin, and it's just putting itself down front and center.
They're probably blended in pretty nice because
Probably. There's also blackberry leaves, it says.
just the leaves.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's nice.
All right.
Highly recommend.
Well done. All right. Well, sip on your tea for our first spooky season episode, which I think you are going to be very interested in.
Okay.
Okay. To kick off our October month, I'm going to cover a witch trial. You know, I love covering these stories.
Love some witches.
We did the Pendle Hill
Mhm.
witches last time, which was fascinating. And so obviously witches are iconic around Halloween time because the Wicked Witch of the West, Hocus Pocus, those are the kinds of witches we love to play at Halloween. Obviously, they're my favorite. We were Hocus Pocus last year.
Mhm.
But always the actual reality of the witchcraft trials are terrifying and devastating.
Yes, awful.
And not anything like what we've come to love as the friendly Halloween witch or the wicked, mischievous Halloween
I
witch.
gotta watch that Sandra Bullock movie still.
Practical Magic.
Yeah.
You might be a little scared of it. We should watch it together when we're together
I feel like
next
it's on
weekend.
I feel like it's on my cusp.
You might be a little scared, but we can watch
Okay.
it together. And that way you can bunk with me that night if you're scared. So I'm going to talk today about the first victims of witchcraft accusations in colonial America. Most people will think of Salem when I say that, which wasn't great, right? From 1692 to 1693, 156 people were accused of being a witch.
So bad.
30 were found guilty and 19 people were executed.
So bad.
But before
In the worst
Salem,
way.
awful, another witch hunt took place. One that lasted for decades. And one a lot of people don't know about. And the lives of these innocent people have been somewhat forgotten with the passage of time. And that's the Hartford Witch Trials, which took place in Connecticut from 1647 to 1697.
Ooh.
So during that time, 49 people were accused, 34 were charged, and 11 were executed.
Yikes.
Right off the bat, compared to Salem, it seems much less severe because it's over a longer amount of time, it's less people. But those numbers in no way tell the whole story of the Hartford Witch Panic, which was a small section from 1662 to 1663 that absolutely terrorized the Connecticut
Just
colony.
a year.
Mm-hmm. But before what was classified as the panic officially began, from 1647 to 1655, Connecticut charged 7 people with witchcraft, and all 7 were found guilty and executed. That's a 100% conviction rate. So if you compare that to Massachusetts, that's terrifying because in Massachusetts, you have a pretty decent chance of being acquitted or getting another punishment, where at that point in Connecticut, if you're found guilty of witchcraft, you're sent to the gallows.
Yeah, you're done for. Also, I'd like to correct you. It's pronounced Massachusetts. Got him.
Have we told that story before?
I'm not sure. Probably.
Reader's Digest version. My husband called it Massachusetts when we went to visit for the
Seriously?
first time and didn't believe me that it was Massachusetts. And I said, I live in New England. I know it's Massachusetts. And
There's a CH.
yeah, he just didn't believe me. And he
so
finally came around, and then I didn't believe him that that's how people said it. And I called his family, and that's in fact how they said it. So educating.
Fun fact.
Yeah, you know. Now, I just real quick before we continue on to this story, I want to pause to mention a few sources that'll be in the source notes. So, "The Devil in the Shape of a Woman: Witchcraft in Colonial
Oh.
New England" by Carol F. Karlsen, and then another podcast that I listened to called Thou Shalt Not Suffer, the Witch Trial podcast with Josh Hutchinson and Sarah Jack, which I will mention a lot because they go over every single detail.
Cool.
It's so much history. So if you're interested in learning more, I highly recommend that podcast. It'll be linked. Now, the first person to be executed for witchcraft in colonial America was in 1647, a woman named Alice Young in Hartford.
She could read.
These witch hunts obviously affected both men and women, but they're disproportionately falling on females
Yep.
because they did not hold the power in Puritan society. And they were in charge of most of the things that would convey some sort of illness: food preparation, birthing children,
Right.
caring for children, caring for animals. So if someone gets sick from eating bad meat, it has nothing to do with the fact that they don't have a refrigerator in the kitchen and everything to do with the fact that a woman
Right.
prepared the meal and must have put a spell on it,
And it's a witch.
right?
I put a spell on you.
Great
Good
song. My favorite song.
I heard the original the other day.
Okay.
I of course it would be based on a real song, but that was a big revelation for me.
You did, yeah. A lot of people have covered it.
It's great.
A lot of versions out there. Which one did you hear?
I thought the original, it sounded like a back in the day.
Was it Nina Simone?
No.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
I
There's a
don't
lot out
know.
there. Okay, well, we'll get back to it.
Panic.
So, accusing someone of witchcraft becomes a way to explain away a woman's power and keep them under control,
Yep.
particularly independent older women, because we've learned in several of our stories, if you're a widow, you're the most dangerous kind of woman because
Oh yeah.
one, you're probably too old to give birth. So,
Mm-hmm.
and two, you've inherited your husband's money, his land, and his power because now you're in charge of things. And so those women often became the biggest targets. It's not always the case, but that was majority of
gross.
the women. At this time in Connecticut, to be accused of being a witch, people just had to witness something that could be considered witchcraft. And it is a loose definition. This could be
I'm sure.
almost anything. A lot of it was what they called spectral evidence. For instance,
Spectral.
the accused, the spirit of the accused, would visit, their neighbor at night, hit them or scare them, and then vanish, which is in reality either a lie or a dream, right?
Yeah.
One or the other. The accused would turn into a cow or a goat or a chicken. The accused would touch somebody and then they'd become ill. This is how easy it is to be accused, and you only need two people to come forward with a story, and the stories don't have to match up, right?
Perfect.
Matthew can say that he saw you turn into a cow, and Thomas can say that you visited him at night and scared him. And they're like, whoop, that's it. Time to go to trial. And these are the actual testimonies that are coming out in these witchcraft trials.
Oh, really based in reason, in fact. It makes you really question all the documents written at that time.
Serious. Where witches were thought to be able to work their magic was also on a really broad spectrum. So they could make people fall in love or out of love. They could adjust the weather, which could be very dangerous to a population that's mostly farmers, right? They could hurt or kill animals. They could spoil food. They could shapeshift. They could predict the future. And they could make people sick or even kill people.
I'll take the shape-shifting one.
I know. Some of these things sound cool. I would want to be
A lot of
friends
them do.
with a woman who could turn into a bunny rabbit and tell me my future. That sounds amazing.
Yes, correct. That's amazing. Just got a whole image of that. I'm skipping forward a little bit, but don't you think when you're about to kill these people, if they're so powerful, couldn't they actually do something about it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I have a lot of questions that come up during the tests that they put these people through. It doesn't make any sense, because of, the evidence needed and the beliefs of the powers witches have. This is putting women constantly in dangerous situations. Midwives who deliver a stillborn or a sick child, that could be considered witchcraft.
Right.
The infant mortality
Which
rate
is so common.
Off the charts in the 1600s. Hello. You prepare a meal for your neighbor, they become sick. Could be a coincidence. It could be the fact eating is a gamble in the 1600s. Okay.
Yeah.
Good luck to you. The neighbors all fall ill, but you don't. How come you didn't?
Right.
Right. Anything can be seen as this. People seem to believe it. A lot of people seem to believe it. I think there are other people who just want to hurt somebody.
It's the groupthink.
But think about the time that they are in. They can't explain anything.
Yeah.
And this makes as much sense to them as anything else they can think of. But if you think about all that's needed for the trials, this is eyewitness testimony only. And we know today
So bad.
that about half of wrongful convictions are based on eyewitness testimony where somebody's not even trying to be mean. They just are
Right.
doing their best. Eyewitness testimony is notoriously unreliable. It's really hard to remember a point in time that you weren't paying attention to.
Yeah, of course.
Somebody's life is on the line for eyewitness testimony that they don't have any kind of scientific reference for. A terrifying time.
Yeah.
Now, the punishment for witchcraft in the colonies, if they were executed, sometimes they weren't executed, but if they were, it was always hanging. It was never, no witch was ever burned at the stake in colonial America.
Oh, okay.
And what's sad about this is people were watching their family members be executed and they were not allowed to give them a proper burial
What?
because they were a witch. So sometimes family members would have to watch their loved one be executed and then they would try to steal the body and bury them in secret.
Yeah.
And at this time, again, this is a Puritan society. Being buried properly means a whole lot to these folks.
Mm-hmm.
What most of these women were doing when they were accused of witchcraft, sometimes it was just petty things, neighbor rivalries, or they didn't like somebody and they would jump to that conclusion of witchcraft. But lots of times the women that were accused are women who are really trying to be scientists in that day and age. They're trying to find
Yeah.
healing remedies. They're trying
This is
to
always
heal.
power play.
Heal sickness. They're trying to find some sort of order to the chaos of nature
Yeah.
to be successful. And that's really what scares people.
Exactly. It's always a use to keep people down.
So as I mentioned, the first person executed was Alice Young, and very little is known about Alice. But based on the records, it's thought that the most likely possibility was a massive flu epidemic hit the town, and Alice became the scapegoat. 27 people died that year, which was about 5 times higher than the previous year. And Alice's neighbors died, their children, and Alice and her daughter did not. And it's thought that that reason alone caused Alice to be charged with witchcraft, and she was executed May
Insane.
26th, 1647.
Insane. Just crazy town. Like, obviously we know there's different strains of flus. There's different strains. I mean, like, think about our pandemic. Like, that's just a different strain of something that's existed before. And sometimes it's worse.
And that's what I'm saying. I think, it's easy to say that the people accusing were just evil, bad people, and some of them for sure were. But there's also people, this is probably a family who's lost all the children in their family and can't explain it, and they are trying to understand their grief. That you'll see a common thread where a lot of the accusers are either trying to save themselves because they're being accused, or they're trying to explain some sort of terrible event that has happened to them that they just have no understanding of.
Gotcha.
Sad all the way around. And then you obviously have other people who are just, that woman
Evil.
seems a little dicey. We should probably rein in her power.
That woman's too smart for her own good.
It's this weird mix. The second woman executed was Mary Johnson in December of 1648. Mary was a servant who had been accused of stealing on 2 different occasions from different households. And she was punished for her crimes by being publicly whipped.
Oh, God. Don't work there again.
While she was being whipped, she stated that she hated her job and that the devil was helping her with her chores.
Okay.
And the example she gave was she didn't want to clean the fireplace and she went outside to do something else. And when she came back, it was cleaned.
Maybe she shouldn't have said that.
And the only reason she could think of was that the devil had helped her.
Oh, boy. Why would you say that out loud?
This got things rolling and they started
Yeah.
to push on it. And she admitted to uncleanness with men and devils. And she said she had killed a child.
Whoa.
Hold on. I don't. First off, what does this really mean? Is she being whipped while she's being forced to say these things? Is she confessing under duress? That we don't know. They're not going to give those details. Is she being told to say this? The uncleanness with men is that Was she raped? Did she have sex just out of wedlock and feels guilty about it because she's living in Puritan society where you can't even show your ankles?
Probably.
Right?
That must be it. I mean, what else would that mean?
There's more to this. Well, she definitely had sex with somebody, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, did she have consensual sex or was she raped?
Yeah.
How is that view being shaped? Did she have a miscarriage and she considers it
Jeez.
that she killed a child? I don't know. None of these details were asked. There's very little on her. But the Puritans are so strict and rigid with what is right and wrong. You start to see this phenomenon both here and in Salem where people start confessing because either they see no hope for them and they're just going to lean in, or they think they did something wrong because maybe she did have sex. That was wrong and she is bad and the devil must have been the reason for that. And they just accept the fact that this must be true.
Yeah, I could totally see that because they're in such a strict Puritan society. So she's using that as the reason.
Yeah. I don't believe that she actually murdered anyone because she wasn't charged for that. They never brought that charge up. So I don't know where that confession part came from. Instead, she was charged and convicted of being familiar with the devil.
Who isn't? Am I right?
And this made Mary Johnson the first colonial confession of witchcraft.
Oh, colonial confession.
Yeah. Several sources will state that Mary's execution was delayed just long enough for her to give birth, and that the son she gave birth to was given to the prison keeper for 15 pounds. But the podcast I mentioned earlier, which I told you I'll reference often, believes that what actually happened is there was another woman with the last name Johnson at the same time, and she was convicted of a different crime, and she was the one who was pregnant and the records got mixed up over history. It was a game of telephone. And so they don't believe Mary Johnson actually gave birth, but that's one of the stories out there.
Interesting.
Now, the next two found guilty of witchcraft were the first couple to be accused, John Carrington Sr. and Joan Carrington. And they are charged with works above the course of nature and being buzzed with the devil. They're charged in February of 1651, and very little is known about them other than John was a carpenter and had been fined previously for selling a gun to a Native American. You will notice a very strong theme of men are only accused if they are associated with a woman who's believed to be a witch, and often if they have some sort of past where they've broken a rule.
Interesting.
That seems to be the triggers that get men accused.
Okay.
Sadly, the couple were hanged in March of 1651.
Yikes.
Now, again, in 1651, a woman by the name of Goody Bassett. So Goody is a term for good wife. It's similar to Mrs. Oh. They don't even know her first name.
Wow.
Goody Bassett was hanged in 1651 and nobody knows why. It's unknown. In 1653, a woman by the name of Goody Knapp, again, they don't know her first name, was also executed.
Can we go back to that?
To Goody?
Call me Goody Powell.
Well, it stands for good wife, which I don't love.
Never mind.
Yeah, yes. I'm not interested. Now, Goody Knapp was asked to name names, and she's quoted as saying, "The truth is, you would have me say that good wife Staples is a witch, but I have sins enough to answer for already, and I will not add this to my condemnation. I know nothing by good wife Staples, and I hope she is an honest woman."
Oh, that's awesome of her.
Right? And Goody was convicted due to witches' marks, which we talked about last year, which are thought to be extra teats. I cannot for the life of me seem to get away from this word. It's like I opened a teat portal when I mentioned it accidentally. It has been in every episode since. I don't understand it.
Bring on the teats!
It's ridiculous. This is a real thought. They believed that witches would have extra teats, often in a secret place, which devils or devil's buddies would suckle on.
Stop.
That's an actual belief.
Don't say any of those words again in that same order.
And so many of those words need to never come out of my mouth again. But that is a true belief. And that's why Goody Knapp was hanged for this.
What?
Mm-hmm. Good wife Staples, the woman she refused to name, returns a favor to Goody Knapp, saying she's innocent and trying to stop Knapp from being executed. it still happened. When Goody Knapp was cut down, Goody Staples was said to have run to the body demanding to see the evidence.
Good for her.
And when they refused, she stripped the body naked and yelled, "Here are no more teats than I myself have or any woman if you but search the body."
Fuck yeah, Staples.
Well, this enraged one of the men, Roger Ludlow, who had convicted Goody Knapp. And he claimed that before Knapp was executed, she whispered in his ear that Goody Staples was guilty as well.
No.
Knapp had pulled Ludlow aside and whispered something in his ear. People had seen it.
But he didn't say that. She didn't say that.
Well, once Goody Staples was accused, her husband, who has no crimes and is probably a wealthy man, said nope, and he sued Ludlow. The Staples actually won, so he saved his wife.
That's amazing.
And Ludlow had to pay them a fine.
That's amazing. Like, this is what we got to do. We have to fight back. Like, show the evidence. There's nothing there. You're a psycho trying to bring the women down.
Well, Ludlow was so upset after this that he just packed up and moved.
Bye, bitch.
Bye.
Hope you don't trip and fall in a ditch on your way.
What do you think Goody Knapp whispered in his ear? I bet you it was something so good and had nothing to do with Staples. I bet she pulled him aside and said, like, I'll see you in hell, buddy.
Yeah, God's gonna punish you for this or something like that.
Yeah, I bet she told him something that just made him so mad.
I mean, he's an awful person. He just made shit up.
Now, the last person in this 7-person stretch was hanged in 1654. Her name was Lydia Gilbert. In 1651, okay, so you can see the space between the time she was executed, Lydia and what's believed to have been her husband, Thomas Gilbert, and I say believed because they don't know if it was her husband or her brother or her father, but it was another man that she was connected to. They lived with a man named Henry Stiles. Lydia kept house and Thomas worked for Henry. One day, Henry and his neighbor, Mr. Allen, were out practicing militia exercises. So they were shooting guns. The Gilberts are nowhere involved in this.
Okay.
Mr. Allen accidentally kills Mr. Stiles.
Whoops.
And Mr. Allen was found guilty of homicide by misadventure, which is like my favorite charge.
I hope I die that way.
By your own
my
misadventure.
God. Amazing.
Basically, Mr. Allen has to pay a fine. He's not allowed to have a gun for a minute. And he's on probation. He's released on house arrest, essentially, to his father.
Okay, it's wild that someone can kill someone by accident and not have really much done to them. And then, like, these women are like, oh, I heard you got a teat down there.
I know.
Off to the gallows.
I feel like, honestly, it's the 1600s. Imagine how often guns were like, whoops, going off. Because, I mean, you know what I'm saying? This is probably something that sadly occurred more than it does today. And so I think that the punishment is probably, it was truly an accident. And Mr. Allen, it sounds like Mr. Allen explained it and took blame for it. And it seems like it was a total accident.
What year was it?
1651. Here's the thing, though. After it happened, rumors started to form for years that Lydia had caused Mr. Allen's firearm to discharge due to her witchcraft.
Come on. Just own your mistakes, you pathetic little...
I don't think it was Mr. Allen who was doing this. She was found guilty. And there's no record of her execution, but it is believed by historians that she was also hanged.
That makes me so mad. Because it's not only just like throwing random women under the bus, but also it's just like demeaning their lives. Like they don't matter enough and they can just be thrown into the gallows for like a basic nothing.
She had nothing to do with this. And here's the thing that if you think about it, this happened in 1651. So for years, this woman is living in apprehension and anxiety and terror that something like this might happen that could be serious. I mean, I get nervous about sending an email. This woman's having to live with actual death threats just by the way of being in the same vicinity of an accident.
So bad.
So you can see that Connecticut is off to an unbelievably dangerous start. This is before the panic set in. Pre-panic.
Oh boy.
After these 7 executions, a man by the name of John Winthrop Jr. started to consult on the cases. Now, he's a leading scientist and alchemist, which alchemy is at that time is blending science, religion, and magic. From 1655 to 1661, while he is consulting, no one is executed. He said he believed in witchcraft, but he also believed not all magic was evil. And he was cool with women practicing alchemy and magic. He also thought it's best practice to make sure that we make these decisions with evidence and precision.
Imagine that.
So Winthrop is like, hey, let's take a little
right.
break for science, guys, and let's consider it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Winthrop becomes this moderate voice of reason, and he also seems to have a skill for diplomacy, which is what makes him successful.
Yeah.
He's not saying, Ezekiel, you're nuts. She only has 2 teats and you had a dream. Let it go. He's not doing that because that would ostracize him. He's able to remain in that inner circle, and he'll say things walking this very fine line, something more like, yes, I agree. Her behavior is peculiar and not in line with our Puritan ideals. But do we believe that she should be executed for witchcraft? And then he'll let them stew on it a little bit. And he's able to sway. Obviously, he's successful the whole time he's consulting. No one's executed.
That's awesome. Good job.
Now, whether it's Winthrop's consultations alone that keep the panic at bay, no one can say for sure. But in 1660, King Charles II is restored to the throne. This is a problem for the colony because they need a royal charter and they don't have one. The royal charter will let them do their own thing, be their own person, make their own laws, all that stuff. But there's some contention around should we get it because they don't really want to be associated with King Charles.
Yeah.
Do they do this? Do they do that? Winthrop decides to make the journey back to England in 1661 to try and do the impossible, which is get the royal charter. With John Winthrop Jr. gone, the trials immediately heat up.
Wow.
The voice of reason has left the building, and women are in danger.
God, that sucks.
From 1662 to 1663 is the official period of the Hartford Panic. It starts with 8-year-old Elizabeth Kelly. She wakes up sick the day after Elizabeth had been at her neighbor's, Goody Ayres. Her first name is Judith. Goody Ayres had given her broth, and the next day Elizabeth was sick. Mr. Kelly, Elizabeth's father, claimed once she fell ill, Elizabeth started to cry and scream about Judith Ayres. Her father said that she was quoted as saying, "Father, Father, help me, help me. Goodwife Ayres is upon me. She chokes me. She kneels on my belly. She will break my bowels. She pinches me. She will make me black and blue. Goodwife Ayres torments me. She pricks me with pins.
God.
She will kill me. Oh, Father, set on the great furnace and scald her. Get the broad axe and cut off her head. Goodwife
Whoa.
Ayres torments me. She pricks me with pins and she will kill me."
How old is this girl?
She's 8. So
How do you say all these things?
Puritan 8hood is different.
Wow.
Elizabeth is sick for several days, and her last words are, "Goody Ayres chokes me." When she passes away, Mr. Kelly goes to the magistrates and demands to get justice for his daughter. Obviously, he says Goodwife Ayres strangled her. Another couple, Mary and Andrew Sanford, are also accused somehow. They're in this. And then Goodwife Ayres' husband, William, blames another woman named Rebecca Greensmith. And this just kicks off the witch hunt. The Kellys have lost their 8-year-old daughter, and I really believe that they think it's through witchcraft.
Yeah.
This is an example of what I'm saying. Not everybody was just trying to cut somebody down. This was something that was prevalent in their society. They just lost their 8-year-old daughter. They had no reason for it. They had no explanation. And this is what she was saying in some sort of delirious illness. I think they believed it. They have laid out Elizabeth's body in their house. The girl is said to have bruises on her body, particularly on the back of her arms, which they contribute to Elizabeth's statement that Goodwife Ayres was pinching her and hurting her. When they rolled Elizabeth over, she smelled so foul that men had to leave the room, which to them was a sign that the devil was present.
No, that's just what happens.
The magistrates force Judith Ayres to stand near the body, and when they did that, a red spot was said to have appeared on the girl's cheek, which at that time, the body was supposed to point to the accused, point to the guilty party. And they believed it.
So ridiculous.
This is none of these things are good for Goody Ayres. And all that's happening here is they do not have an understanding of how death affects the body.
Yeah.
The bruises were most likely a pooling of blood from the position she was left in. And the smell is because she's deceased,
Yeah.
right? That's what it is. The magistrates order an autopsy of Elizabeth. Now, Winthrop is the medical man in town, but he's gone.
Come back.
This means they have to call for Dr. Rossiter, who is a few towns over. Dr. Rossiter is going to perform the first autopsy ever in Connecticut and the first autopsy for evidence on witchcraft. Being a scientific first is sometimes not great. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
The fact that this is the
crazy.
first autopsy in Connecticut does not bode well for Judith. So Dr. Rossiter, along with help from the schoolmaster, who I can only imagine is medically trained, state that Elizabeth did not die of natural causes, but of something supernatural.
Yeah, of course. Makes total sense.
This confirms to everyone that Judith is a witch, when in reality, Dr. Rossiter was not skilled in postmortems, obviously, because this is the first one he's ever done that anybody's ever done around him.
Shit.
And he lived far enough away that by the time he arrived, sadly, Elizabeth had been dead for about a week.
Oh, gross.
In 1925, Dr. Walter Steiner reviewed the original autopsy notes and believes that Dr. Rossiter was just simply unfamiliar with a body in that stage of decomposition.
Got it.
And mistakenly believed that it was a supernatural cause of death.
Oh, God.
All the findings noted were in line with the stages of decay at what would be about 5 to 7 days. It's believed that Elizabeth most likely suffered from pneumonia and sepsis, which is an infection of the blood that causes absolute delirium.
Yep.
And explains her strange accusations about good years. And the podcast, Thou Shalt Not Suffer, floats a theory that it's also possible Elizabeth was accidentally poisoned because when her stomach started hurting, her father gave her angelica root, which is fine. But angelica root is often mistaken for another herb that can be very poisonous. That's a theory that maybe she was accidentally poisoned, which can also cause hallucinations.
What's the other root?
Hemlock.
Oh.
It seems odd still, I think, in present day to imagine, like you pointed out, that an 8-year-old would say these things. But
yeah,
this is all they're hearing. Stories of witchcraft are, the R.L. Stein of their time. They're hearing it from neighbors. They're hearing it from their parents. They're warned of it at church. These images would be fresh in their mind because they're trying to avoid the evil that surrounds them, right?
Lordy.
It takes weeks for charges to be officially brought against Judith Ayers, but you better believe stories start coming out of the woodworks as soon as that first accusation hits. Neighbors recount a time where Judith told them she was a young woman in London. She had a date. She arrived to meet a man who had hooves instead of feet.
Oh.
And she left.
A centaur.
This means to them that obviously the devil is comfortable with appearing to Judith, so she must be a witch. Judith's husband also has a record of misdemeanors. He stole a pig. So there
Watch
you go.
out.
I told you, if these men have any kind of like petty small theft, it really makes it more dangerous. There is some evidence that both Judith and her husband William were subject to the water test.
Oh, God.
Which is one of those things we talked about where they're bound and they were thrown into the Connecticut River, which is the river I grew up hanging out in. And if they float, they're guilty. And if they sink, they're innocent, which is the dumbest test I can ever imagine. When the heirs survived, they knew they would be executed. And friends are believed to have broke Judith out of jail so she could escape with her life.
Good.
And we know for a fact that Judith and her husband fled town and they had to leave their son behind.
Oh, my God. What ended up happening to him?
I believe he was an apprentice or an indentured servant.
Eesh.
Yeah. Around the same time that Elizabeth fell ill, another young woman named Anne Cole, her age is unknown, but it's thought that she was probably a teenager, maybe a little older. She started to have fits, and never when she was alone, always when somebody was present. She spoke of evil spirits, and then she slipped into a Danish accent, which clearly meant she was possessed.
Oh, boy, I'm screwed.
I know, that's the first thing I thought was, well, Lord, maybe that's what's been happening to Alana this whole time. But slipping into an accent that doesn't seem like the best possession I've ever heard of. You know what I mean? If that's what's happening, that seems pretty low
Yeah.
for the Prince of Darkness, in my opinion.
The Prince of Darkness.
Just a side note, I don't know if this matters at all, but a Danish family had recently moved there.
Yeah.
Just FYI.
And she's like me. Eat
And
those
she
accents
just
up.
happened to talk like her new neighbors. Anne Cole blamed Rebecca Greensmith, who is already in prison from Elizabeth Kelly accusations that were going wild, and another woman named Elizabeth Seeger, both of whom are friends with Goody Ayers. Rebecca and her husband Nathaniel are not super popular in town. Imagine that. Because these claims always seem to happen to women on the margins of society, right? And then the men who are with them. Rebecca was described as lewd, ignorant, and considerably aged.
Wow.
Rude. Get it?
Wow,
Get it together.
wow.
So these are all the things that you don't want in a woman. Outspoken, unladylike, and old. Right? That's not what the Puritans are looking for. Nathaniel also had a history of petty theft. When brought to trial, Nathaniel was found innocent and released. But Rebecca started confessing.
What?
She started by saying that she danced with the devil in some sort of forced confabulation.
Oh.
Along with Elizabeth Seeger, Mary Sanford, and Goody Ayers, William Ayers, and several other women in town.
Stop throwing everybody under the bus. Shut your mouth.
In reality, this group was thought to be having a Christmas party because Puritans didn't celebrate anything at all.
Right.
And they,
real exciting folk.
these are women who have grown up, not in Connecticut, they grew up in London.
Yes.
And they're used to celebrating Christmas. And they were thought to be...
You sound like you're from London.
They were thought to be having a Christmas party. And that was frowned upon.
With
that
the
was
devil.
Thought, yeah.
Good Lord.
But Rebecca went on to say things like women changed into cats, some were flying, the devil had a carnal knowledge of her, and that her and the devil were together like a woman and a demon.
Oh.
And that's what she said. Yeah. He knows of her. Nathaniel is free. He's already been acquitted, and he's hearing all this, and he is begging his wife to please at least take him out of these accusations, because Rebecca has 2 children from another marriage, and they're still young enough that they need care. And he says, please stop blaming me. I will take care of the children. You need somebody to take care of the children. Please stop. And she says, I'm sorry, but this is the only way to save your soul.
So she just went nuts.
It's thought that she might have had a mental illness.
Okay.
Rebecca claims that, here are her claims for witchcraft against her own husband, that he can lift heavy things and do more labor than one man. When she asked him about it, he said he'd had help that I knew not of. So basically her husband was a strong, hardworking man who may or may not have had a farmhand help for a day.
Yeah.
Right? Also,
oh boy.
Years ago, a fox followed him.
You're in the wilderness.
Yeah,
maybe you smell like
forest.
meat.
Yeah, or maybe the fox is sick, right?
Yeah.
Rabies, and then they're real confrontational. Friendly. He also had a black dog or a black fox approach him. This is it.
Wow.
That's it. Nathaniel and Rebecca Greensmith were brought to trial in January of 1663. Again, Nathaniel is begging for anybody to believe that he's innocent. Rebecca sticks to her story, and they're both executed on January 25th.
That's awful.
I really think she may have been mentally ill or just so... This is a thing that is so invasive about these stories, is that it gets into the minds of even the people who are being accused. She thought she was doing the right thing.
I would be like Nathaniel, like, what the fuck, y'all? Like, I'm not doing these. There's no witchcraft. I'm a strong man. Cool. There's foxes in the forest. Cool.
Now, they're both executed, and on the same day as another woman named Mary Barnes from a neighboring town. Side note, Anne Cole was miraculously healthy after the Greensmiths were executed, which only further proved the theory that she was bewitched and possessed.
Or she's a lying little snake.
Or she's epileptic.
Right. That's what I thought she was.
Or has a fainting spell. Or her corset's too tight. I mean, come on.
Also, how do you know? Well, yeah, weird.
Or she has an ear for voices and she should have been on Saturday Night Live down at the community playhouse instead of pretending she was possessed by
a Danish.
the devil was making her speak with an accent. I mean, that is just so boring for a devil. You think the devil's out there?
It's a Danish accent.
I don't know. Don't try it. Now, it's thought by historians that a woman named Mary Sanford, who I mentioned briefly earlier, who was mentioned at this Christmas dance party by Rebecca Greensmith, was also executed shortly after Goodyear's was accused.
Oh.
Her and her husband, Andrew, were both charged, but Andrew was found innocent. Mary was found guilty. Again, no record exists, but it's believed that she was hanged. Can you imagine having to be the one who's found innocent? I mean, Nathaniel's is terrible. He was found guilty, but
really
then
is.
it's not better on the other side either.
What would I do? I would want to move.
I know, right?
But this is the case at anywhere. I mean,
the woman that was hanged with the Greensmiths, Mary Barnes, she was taken from Farmington, Connecticut after a charge of witchcraft was placed against her by Rebecca Greensmith.
Rebecca, get out.
She had been born in England in 1631, making her 32 at the time of her execution. She had married Thomas Barnes at the age of 17, and the family had originally lived in Hartford, but they'd moved to Farmington, and they were two of the original colonial settlers of that particular town. Mary was the mother of 4 children. Sarah, Benjamin, Joseph, and Hannah. They're thought to be, at the time of her execution, 14, 10, 8, and 6.
Wow.
It's unknown the exact nature of the charges brought against Mary, but she had been named, and she was known, and her name is in the records of testifying against others in previous witch trials. Mary was kept in jail for 3 weeks. Her husband had to pay for that, and she was executed immediately after the Greensmiths, making her the last person executed in Connecticut.
Awful.
Now, a few months after Mary's execution, her youngest daughter, Hannah, passed away. And Thomas, her husband, negotiated a marriage contract with his neighbor, John Andrews, to wed his 20-year-old daughter, Mary. Thomas is 48.
Oh!
It's also quite possible, in an article I read, John Andrews was listed as the sheriff that arrested Mary Barnes. That seems weird to me.
That's not okay.
The marriage contract also required Thomas to put out the children, except for Benjamin, who was the oldest male. There was also an exception in there that Thomas could allow Sarah to stay in the house if the second wife, Mary, agreed and Sarah proved useful.
Ew.
Yeah, ew.
Ew. I'm very upset.
So I want to pause just to think about what that moment must have been like for the people, not just who were executed, but for the families who had to watch.
All the ripple effects.
If Mary's children were there, or if they're just having to live in town after something like this, did they get a chance to even say goodbye to their mother?
Right.
As I was thinking this, I was listening to a different podcast by Emily Fletcher. It's called Why Isn't Everyone Doing This? It has absolutely nothing to do with true crime. Emily is actually the founder of Ziva Meditation. And so this podcast was exploring modalities that healers, scientists, doctors have used to change their life for the better. And on the episode I'm listening to, it features Sarah Jenks, who's talking about sacred feminine ceremonies throughout the years and how they were erased violently throughout history and done in a way that, burning women or executing people who didn't have the same religious beliefs, and how those sacred feminine ceremonies have just been taken out of so many cultures. And that trauma of doing so is passed down through generations and can take decades to heal. And as she was saying that, all I'm thinking about, because I'm just reading about witch trials, that's exactly what's happening here. The act of gathering in the woods is a Christmas party. It's just a joyful ceremony.
Yeah.
Where they're celebrating their beliefs. And this is what kicked off the accusations by the Greensmiths, which really kicked off so many. And the trauma that these families endured is so strong.
So bad.
That it's going to be passed down through generations.
That's what I'm saying, the ripples.
So studies are now being done that show it's possible trauma can be imprinted in DNA.
What?
I read articles from the BBC and Washington Post, and this is, cutting edge, so some scientists don't believe it, but
yeah, beginning.
It talked of studies around epigenetic markers, which can switch them off or on, and can impact the traits and diseases that are inherited by future generations.
Oh my God.
The articles reference several different studies that show research around just incredibly traumatic events that we all
Like
know, right?
slavery.
Holocaust, slavery, prisoners of war. And the Washington Post cites a study by Rachel Yehuda, which gives the example of mothers who have survived the Holocaust compared to Jewish women at the same time, but not living in Europe. And women who endured the Holocaust had changes in their actual DNA that altered their stress response. And it was passed on to their children.
Wow.
Even though their children were not in the same situation.
Right.
And then the BBC covered a study on prisoner of war survivors. They found that the sons of POW survivors had a mortality rate 11% higher than that of a son born to a non-captured vet.
Wow.
Once this is discovered, they immediately hypothesized that could be an environmental shift, meaning somebody who had endured that kind of trauma themselves might be creating a different environment.
For sure.
But then what they did is they tested sons who were born before their father was a POW and after, and only the sons born after had these effects.
But couldn't that still be environmental? Because like the POW is creating the...
But these boys would have been born in the same household. They would have been raised the same.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And so that shift to their makeup only happened after their father.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right?
Are these peer reviewed? I'm dying to look at them now.
I'll source them. And they've done it on animals more, right? The same thing of they'll make a scent. The example they give is a cherry blossom, they'll shock them. And then and then every generation after will have a sensitivity to the smell of cherry blossom.
I hate that.
So these children during these colonial times, it's not just the trauma of watching their mother or their father be executed. They are living in a world that is absolutely not safe.
Mm-hmm.
Women need to be quiet, small, invisible, or they could die. And so do the men that support them.
I'm a goner.
Yeah. The fear of this message, though, echoes literally through the generations on some level, right? Either environmental and possibly in the actual makeup of their DNA.
That's crazy.
It's so fascinating to me that there's so much we don't know. And
Yeah.
in the 1600s, we're laughing at all this now, but 300 years from now, they're going to be laughing at us.
We always say it. Like, what are we doing wrong now?
We don't know how DNA really is doing its thing. After Mary Barnes is executed, Elizabeth Seeger's life is now at risk. She was named as well by Ann Cole and Rebecca Greensmith. Other people are coming forward. Another woman in town said Elizabeth flew into her room and hit her in the middle of the night. That didn't happen, ma'am. Another man said he saw her dancing in the woods, making potions.
What's wrong with that?
I don't know.
That's what I do every weekend.
She was indicted the same day as Mary Barnes. However, she was found innocent. Side note, it would appear that Elizabeth is married to a much older man who is wealthy.
Huh.
I don't know if that has anything to do with it, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, interesting note.
But Elizabeth is outspoken. They don't love her. A few months later, Elizabeth is tried again for witchcraft, and the charges are changed to adultery.
Oh.
For which she was found guilty. Those aren't the same, guys.
No.
Also, it's none of your business. But anyway.
None ya.
So from 1662 to 1663, 12 people are charged with witchcraft. You have Goody Ayres, who ran for her life.
Yeah, thank goodness.
You had Andrew Sanford, who was found innocent, but his wife, Mary Sanford, was hanged. You have Judith Varlet, who I believe is a member of the family with the Danish accent.
Oh, yeah.
You have John and Elizabeth Blackleash, who were charged but were not executed. Catherine Palmer and James Wakely, also charged but not executed. You have the Greensmiths, who are executed. You have Mary Barnes, and you have Elizabeth Seeger on trial. Winthrop returns from England.
Thank
and he's like,
God.
What the hell happened while I was gone, guys?
Yeah,
what
truly
is going
hell. So thanks for leaving. Did you get what you needed? If not, way to go.
Well, he did. He had the charter from the king,
Okay.
which kind of makes him the man of the hour because that was not an easy task. And he uses his power
Do not leave again.
for good to put the brakes on the chaos.
Yes.
Elizabeth Seeger is charged again in 1665, and she's again convicted, this time of witchcraft. Winthrop delays the execution, saying he needs more time to clarify some things. So he delays it, and he spends an entire year reforming the laws that ultimately give him power to pardon people if he chooses, and then he pardons her.
Good job.
Yeah. I should mention that Winthrop was the governor of Connecticut for about 1 billion years. People love him. Yeah.
I mean, he seems great. He seems very level-headed. I'm sure he has some flaws, as we all do, but he seems ahead of his time.
He's definitely the only one on the inside who's helping things
because he believes in science. He truly does. He's like into alchemy and that shit.
Truly, truly does. Winthrop was actually governor from 1659 to 1676, and he had also been governor a year before that just wasn't in succession. So he was like governor for a year, took a year off, and then he was governor forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. He pardons Seeger, saves her life.
Phew.
Things quiet down a bit because Winthrop's back.
Yes.
But in 1668, a woman by the name of Catherine Harrison really gets things going again. She's a medical practitioner. She's an astrologer.
Oh, boy.
She also happens to be a woman who has inherited a ton of land from her deceased husband. So,
too much power.
Catherine had treated her neighbor, Mr. Johnson, and he didn't get better. That's it. Goody Johnson said Catherine came into the room and her husband had a nosebleed. Witchcraft. Stories start coming out of the woodworks again. A boy from years ago said one time he was trying to cross the street and he was paralyzed in the middle of the street. And as he was paralyzed, he saw Catherine turn from a cow into a person.
Oh, okay.
Why would she stop you to see that? And then as soon as she went away, he could walk again. Catherine predicted the name of a girl's future husband.
Well, I feel like they use about 5 names in this day and age.
Yeah, right? Let me guess, was it Thomas?
Benjamin, John.
She's got really good odds. Has anybody not discovered probability yet? Catherine called her cattle home very fast. There you go. Catherine also collected her bees really fast.
She's just a talented woman, but that's not okay.
Another man's oxen ran away when they were near Catherine's house. Sounds like your ox wants to be with Catherine instead of you.
Yeah.
So maybe you need to look at yourself.
Suck on that. She's clearly good with animals.
Another boy saw a calf that turned into Catherine. She told him, get a life, because he said he was going to accuse her of witchcraft, and she was like, get bent. And then after she told him off, she then haunted him and talked of wanting to kill him at night. That's called a dream. She also tried to pinch and strangle him.
God, these pinching. Stop with the pinching. It's weird.
Another woman lent Catherine a hat, and when she returned it, every time she wore it, she was incredible pain, and they had to actually burn the hat. It was so awful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cursed object.
These are the things that people are saying, and the court is, again, taking this as evidence for somebody's life. Catherine, taking this all in, actually files a complaint against everybody because while she's in jail, they're ruining her land and her animals.
Oh, no.
She's not happy about it. May 11th, 1669, she's officially indicted. She's in jail for a long time.
Winthrop, where are you?
May 25th, there's a hung jury. Winthrop interjects at this point and says, all right, let's put her on house arrest until the next trial.
Good.
This angers so many people. They don't want him anywhere near this. They signed a petition.
No.
They want her back in jail. And my question is what you said.
Why can you do a petition?
They want a petition to get her back in jail.
No, but why would you ever accept that from the people as an order to like put someone in jail?
Here's the thing I have. If she's magic, does it matter where you keep her?
Yeah.
Who cares if she's at her house or in jail? She's magic.
They just want to take stuff away from her.
Ugh, most likely her farm. Still, Winthrop pushes back, and he actually creates a council of ministers to decide what evidence is actually needed to convict a witch. He wants kind of a second look because things are getting out of control again. People don't love this, but Winthrop and his colleague, who's a minister, Minister Buckley, they create a document that outlines their argument, and they make a solid case. And they present a list of questions to this council that they created, and they ask, do we need more than one witness for these sightings? So, for instance, the boy says he saw Catherine turn into an animal.
Mm-hmm.
Do we take that one person's account, or do we need 2 people to see her turn into an animal? That might be a little bit better. 2, is spectral evidence legit? So Catherine, her spirit visits him in the night. Can we really count that? Is that where we're at, folks? Is a person telling the future a sign of the devil? And can you be harmed by an apparition and have it counted as evidence? These are very logical questions. So on October 12th, 1669, Catherine Harrison is found guilty.
Oh, no.
The ministers come back with their answers to the questions. And they decide that you, in fact, need 2 people to see these ghosts and shape-shifting. You can't just have one person do it anymore. And also, spectral evidence is no good. It's not solid enough. These new rules really help rein everything in because
I hope so.
under these new rules, Catherine is freed.
Oh.
But she's, I don't want to say asked, but she's told to leave town, which is probably for the best for her safety.
Yeah. Wow.
And she's forced to pay the cost of her jailing.
That's wild.
I know. This pretty much puts an end to it. This pretty much allows them to have a set of rules that makes it a lot harder to continue with this absolute panic. In 1692, one woman was found guilty, but the conviction was overruled. And then a few others were tried later on, but they're acquitted. It's thought, too, that one of the influences in changing these laws, obviously you have Winthrop, who's doing the best he can. He's like a one-man army in there.
Yeah.
But a lot of the accusations, people are getting more comfortable with these accusations and they're getting more into the panic, feeding into the hysteria.
Yeah.
More men are being accused. Women who are younger are being accused. Upper class is being accused.
Wow.
And that's always pushing back on, whoops, we may have gone too far because now it's not just people you don't like.
Right.
Now it's people that actually might affect the livelihood of the colony because they have all the money.
Yep.
So Connecticut gets a little reprieve. Sadly, we won't get into it today, but that 2-witness rule was met in Salem. Multiple people were saying they saw the same ghosts and same spirits, and that's what Salem got out of control. But what's really, really neat about this case is a group of people, including the podcast hosts from Thou Shalt Not Suffer, and other descendants of these people accused of witchcraft and executed, pushed to get all of the people convicted exonerated.
Wow.
And they were successful in May of this year, 2023.
Cool. Good job, y'all.
They worked really hard on this. And other people had tried it previously and it was denied. And they've been working really hard. CNN published an excerpt from the resolution and it read, this is a quote, "The General Assembly recognizes that residents of Colonial, Connecticut were falsely accused of practicing witchcraft in the 17th century, and that such persons were tried, convicted, and sometimes sentenced to death for such offense, and declares that although these accusations, prosecutions, trials, and executions cannot be undone or changed, no disgrace or cause of distress should attach to the heirs of those persons."
That's nice.
Yeah, I think that's a really symbolic gesture, and I think it goes a long way towards helping what we talked about, that generational trauma that would be passed down.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've linked in the show notes to that podcast's website, and you can go and see a list of all of the names. I mentioned several, certainly mentioned all the people that were executed. I mentioned a couple other that were indicted, but you can see all of the people who were charged, even if they were acquitted.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, what do you think?
It's awful. But wow. I mean, I think a lot of things, but it's just so baseless across the board. It's just wild.
I know when you really take a look at it, there's so many things at play here that contribute to something like this being allowed to happen.
Yeah.
One, it's an unbelievably dangerous time where they don't even know you're supposed to wash your hands. You know what I mean? I mean, you are getting sick. You are eating spoiled food.
Yeah.
There are fights that break out. I mean, it is a very dangerous time. Science is really on the down low. It is not at the forefront of everybody's mind.
No,
Instead,
and also for Puritans, especially.
Yeah, religion and magic are.
Yep.
Not science. Disease is absolutely common.
Oh.
It's something every family has to deal with, and they're carrying these unbelievably heavy burdens of grief, every single family. There's no family who's getting away from it. Mental illness is still present, but nobody knows what it is. One of the things a lot of these the sources I read mentioned was somebody who would be muttering which, I mean, I talk to myself all the time. That could just be somebody talking to themselves, but also often people with mental illness will talk to themselves or they're in a different reality and they're actually speaking out loud. That was considered to be casting a spell. And it's this real lack of understanding about what's happening. And think of how scary that the unknown is. And this is attaching some terrible explanation. And then obviously there's just massive amounts of control and fear that are woven through every single part of these stories.
Big time. Oh, wow.
I just can't imagine. Crazy. I can't imagine going about my life, working hard every day, trying to understand the unknown myself, trying to raise my children or take care of my livestock. And somebody says, I came into their bed at night and slapped them. And now I'm on death's door.
Right. It's wild. It's like, it's so baseless. Ugh.
I can't imagine the horror. Well, what are your last words?
I have 4 things.
Nope. Lay it on me.
1, like we've said a million times, best time to live is right now. I know we got our problems, but Lordy, we have solved for a lot of the things that are coming up in this case.
Yeah.
2, really glad for Mr. Winthrop. Thanks for, going against the grain in a diplomatic way and changing hearts and minds and laws. He made a big difference, and we need more people like that. Even when he's facing against the populace, really, in these cases, but he found a way to do it effectively. Yeah, and he saved a lot of people. 3, I said it in one other episode, but man, I wish it's just these women would run and make the colony of their own. I know sometimes they're part of the problem, and men got attached to it too. But really, it's like you said, it's mostly connected to a woman and. Just getting away from all that control garbage and finding their strength of their own. Anyways. And 4th, I have a really cool t-shirt on that's very relevant. I can post it on a story, but it says, Witchcraft and Gardening, because murder is wrong. And Megan got it for me for my birthday. And I think it's relevant.
It is, and you didn't know that we were doing this today.
I didn't. I must be a witch!
You foretold the future. You're familiar with the devil.
I sure am.
Doing those accents.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry to all of the people who had to endure that. I can't possibly
truly
imagine.
Wild. Horrific.
But take a listen to that podcast I mentioned. It doesn't just cover this. It covers tons of other witch trials and also present day updates and news and things that are going on that are similar.
Really cool.
Yeah, this kicks off our spooky season. I can't think of anything much scarier than what I just told for those 11 people and every single person that loved them.
Yeah.
And I think it's really, really nice that their historians are trying to find out their names. If they're not known, they're trying to find out details. They're trying to find their names. They're talking about building memorials for them. And it's important. I had no idea. I grew up in New England. I had no idea that this happened. I only knew about Salem. We will have more spooky cases coming up this month. It's going to like a little less. And
great.
But not bad. Not bad.
All down from hill.
It's all down from hill?
Oh, wow.
What'd you say?
Downhill from here.
It's all down from hill, folks.
I shortened it.
All down from hill. Thank you for listening. You can find us anywhere you listen to your podcast. Please rate, review, like, subscribe. Send us recommendations for teas and crimes. And who should listen, my friend?
Witches.
Obviously.
Friends of witches, families of witches, Connecticutians.
I don't know. I don't know how there's...
No, I don't know.
I don't know how you say that one.
Magistrates and governors and people in power. Do the right thing. Period.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening, and we will be back next week with another spooky season story, and we're out. Bye-bye.
Bye.